All right, you guys
Yes.
want to do a show?
Let's do a show.
All right.
I'm
Let's do a
tired.
quick show.
I think,
Let's
there's not a
do.
lot, there's not that much to say.
Oh,
So,
I think we can knock it out in 3 hours.
I mean, I'm positive we could go on and on,
If you guys
Well,
don't interrupt me,
right.
it can be done in at least maybe 2 hours.
All right. Let's see. Coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, we're going to be talking about squishy pastors slash reverends slash preachers. Just stay with us. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck. Mount Hermeneutics is, it's brought to you by no sponsors whatsoever. Oh
Especially after
man,
this episode.
especially after this episode. But it's free and it's available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. If you want to catch the video, I don't know why we're not on Rumble yet. Can we mention Rumble on YouTube? It doesn't matter.
Uh,
We
Anyway,
just did.
just search Mountain Hermeneutics. Um, all all 50 of you, just do it. Do it right now, and tell your friends and all stuff. And if it's your first time with us, I'm Andre. That's Matt. That's Brian. Fellas, what's happening?
hey, Dre. Hey, Matt.
Boys, how we doing?
All
Good.
right.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
It's been a not as bad a week as the last couple of weeks. I've been traveling, so I'm back. I'm happy. It's a good trip.
Tell us about your travels, Matt.
My travels. Well, it all started on a Tuesday. No, we were out in DC. Carrie was so it's interesting. They called it an award. They gave her a certificate of appreciation. That's what it says on it. But it's actually
Raw.
but it's actually a title. So what it's called is the Women Trailblazers Award, and it's part of the Women's Veteran Council, which is part of the Veterans Administration. So the VA, right? Big VA, we all know the VA. They have, subgroups within the VA, and this subgroup, the Women's Veteran Council, I think that's what it's called. Um, they've decided to use this title of Trailblazer to basically empower women that are worthy of being a part of the organization. So they talked about this in the closing ceremonies that all of these women, these 31 women that were acknowledged and recognized, are now officially empowered to speak on behalf of the VA on women's veterans issues, and using their online presence and their person and face-to-face presence when they're out and about doing the things that they do in the community. It was pretty interesting. It was like I said, there was 31 women that were recognized. The types of women that were there, obviously all veterans. There was a state secretary of Veterans Affairs. There was two CEOs, a professor of law. There were board members. There were entrepreneurs aplenty. It was a pretty rarefied air. A lot of really high powered women veterans that were in the room, and it was really cute watching Carrie because she had imposter syndrome really bad, to where she felt like she didn't belong with all of those important ladies.
Yeah.
And I, had to remind her that they picked her out of however many get submitted for this award. They've been doing it since 2019. They've awarded 96 total in the 6 years. One of the women that was awarded, recognized with Carrie, was the woman responsible for the Women's Veterans Memorial at Arlington Cemetery. So it's kind of a big deal. It was these were some legit women, but it was pretty cool. We got a our one of uh, our Senator Lankford's office coordinated for us to have a tour of the Capitol. I thought it was just going to be me and Carrie and one of the like some aide of theirs. 20 state legislators from Oklahoma happened to be in DC to do a leadership conference with JD Vance the day prior. So they were also part of the tour. So it was like me and Carrie with all of these state senators being, guided around the Capitol, and then the event was on
So,
Thursday.
so you didn't have a chance to pass on my
No,
my regards to
I did not.
Bill Langford. I'm coming
No,
for him
no,
for his
he was
job. Not
Yeah, be careful these days
as soon as it came out, I'm like, whoops, nope.
with your violent rhetoric on the right side, because obviously right violence is way more
it's on both
than
sides. It's on both sides, Trey.
My blood pressure's going up just hearing that. I like that. Anyway, we'll probably get into that for during the
Probably
show.
will. But the event was Thursday at the Library of Congress, which was a really, I'd never been in that building of all the different parts of DC I've toured in the past.
And no, he doesn't have the Declaration of Independence.
I did not steal it. But I thought that was
Nick Cage.
right. I thought that was a really cool building. I enjoyed it more than the Capitol. I don't know why. Fun fact, the Library of Congress was the first building in DC to be built, purpose built for electricity.
All right.
That's the era that it was built in. Yeah. So
I like it.
our docent, the tour guide, was a kindly old former Marine.
Rah.
Right.
Rah.
And he does a little thing about all the services, and he's like, so are there Army here? Okay. The Air Force? Oh, okay. Navy? Okay. We have any Marines? And I raised my hand. He goes, when's our birthday? And I was like, what the hell?
Pop quiz, mother.
Right. So I tried to be cute about it. I was like, the day before Veterans Day. And he goes, which is?
Nice. Nice.
And I was like, November 10th. And then, so then we're doing the tour. Then he walks up to me. He's like, when were you in? And he's like talking to me, and he was in.
I got to be careful what I say with you new fandangoed.
He was in from 67 to 97. And I was like, okay, 30 years coming out of the Vietnam era. That's pretty legit. I was like, so were you a sergeant major or a general? Because not everybody's doing 30 years. And he was like, no, I was just a colonel. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, just.
Yeah, but so the funny story was he was an artillery officer, but he did cross training DLI and did a stint at Second Radio Battalion.
What?
Yeah, so we had all that to. So we're just like off to the side talking about Marine Corps stuff while he's trying to do the tour. It was fun.
He would have been that cool old dude when we were like corporals. Like
maybe
crusty as fuck.
Yeah, like who knows?
97, right? So
if he wasn't the dude that showed up and made me have to start wearing service uniform every day.
He's the reason when we worked at NSA we wore camis once a week. F those guys.
Right.
Bring General Gray back.
Yeah.
Son of a.
A very good argument could be made that the true Marine Corps birthday is July 11th, 1798.
Oh, yeah? Explain.
The Marine Corps was disbanded after the Revolutionary War, as was the Navy. It was reformed to go fight jihadis.
Right, but
Pirates War.
But none of the other services changed their date, right? All the birthdays they all reverted to the original date. So why would ours change?
Sure. I mean, but I'm just saying an argument could be made.
Yeah.
Not that an argument couldn't be made in return to the contrary, but if I didn't want to,
it'd be one of the poorer arguments you presented.
If I didn't want to derail the whole show, I would make a stronger case that
fair enough.
The true Marine Corps was July 11th, but anyway,
the true Marine Corps.
Right.
Yet we still take our spot one place behind the Army in a joint formation.
Our true birth, should say, not that the previous Marines weren't just as much Marines. Anyway, that's not the show we're doing. So
it's not the show we're doing.
It's not the show we're doing. One day maybe we should, but not this day.
But today is not that day.
to, you know, in some of the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk assassination, a new friend of the show, Karen, she yeah, use your shout out Karen.
Hey, Karen.
She she sends me a Facebook post of a pastor, and it's almost as long as one of Brian's blogs.
Is it the one that you sent to
Yeah,
us?
so
Okay.
and I was like, I am not reading that thing. And then I was like, okay, you know what, I'll read it. And then as I started reading it, it started making me mad. So then I started hate reading it. And then I had to, since I read it, I had to share it with these two chuckleheads. And I knew Matt wasn't gonna read it because it was too long.
Well, and I
So
was traveling. In fairness, if I was in my home office, I could have sat down at a computer. I might have
right.
read it. Might.
So then uh our our good friend Brian actually started engaging with Mr. Pastor. And how'd that turn out, Brian?
He blocked me. Yeah.
That's good
Um,
times.
yeah, there's so much I could say about that. So I take it he's our prototype squishy pastor.
He's the
Okay.
one that got me on the kick. And it was weird because all of a sudden my feed, it just started like the algorithm was like, oh, you don't like bitch ass pastors? Well, here you go. so,
There it
so
is.
or
so
or
so
or you do. The algorithm's like maybe you like these.
maybe you're into
Or here's more
into
to hate. Here's more to hate watch.
yeah, that's right. So I started seeing it, and most of it's just a squishy misunderstanding of turn the other cheek. Is really the theme that I'm seeing. Um,
So what do we think? What do we think is the problem? Is there a singular problem?
Well,
Is it bad
first,
theology? Is it misreading? Is it
well,
emasculation of the church? Is
I
it
think I think we should define the problem first. Like what do we
sure?
mean by squishy pastor?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it about this particular guy? I guess we're not going to name him,
No, I don't think that's
um,
healthy.
but but um, what do we not like about him? What
Yeah, Drake, can you give us a couple of key what were a couple of the key points of what aggravated you about his
I
post?
think the first thing that aggravated me was um, he first of all he both sides did, which irked
it
me just
it being
on the surf.
it
It being that hey, um, uh, there's violence from the right and the left
but he
just
was
as much.
but he was
And
talking specifically about people's reaction to Charlie Kirk
y-
and his murder.
yes. And that a bunch of, and I think what really set me off was that he claims that a bunch of Christians also believed that Charlie Kirk was these things that these leftists said he was. And and that if somebody could be read by the same people who um supposedly have the same values, then perhaps the divisive one is him and not necessarily the people who are reading it. And that sort of set me off. Like, well, Pastor, why aren't you vouching for him? Why aren't you explaining why they're wrong by reading what they are into him? And basically he was giving voice to all positions at the same time.
He was
And
giving moral cover to them.
better way to put it, which
Yeah.
is yeah. Um, and I vehemently disagree with that. So
Yeah, I
Um, do you how widespread of a problem do you think this is? And is it something that goes beyond just Charlie Kirk, or do you think that reveals something that's been there? And how would you how would you characterize that thing that it reveals, I guess?
I I don't know. A read that I've been getting just lately, um, and this goes back probably 6 months to I guess the election cycle, um, so longer than 6 months, but this this weird space where people are saying, I'm not political while making political statements. And this isn't even just pastors, even like a baseball announcer. I think I shared a reel with you. There was a young rookie third baseman who plays for the Cubs, and he he
Yeah,
was friends with Charlie Kirk, and he actually left the game or left. He had permission to go to attend the memorial service, which made him miss a game. So when he came back, the announcers from I don't know if it was New York or Cincinnati, whatever, who they
it
were
was
playing.
New York. I think it was the
Yeah,
Mets.
and and just talk about how weird it was. But what was interesting to me about that is he said, "Not, we're not being political here."
But
As he shits on this kid like the whole time, like, and you can tell I'm not being political because I just told you I'm not being political, but I'm going to give you exactly,
with all due respect,
yeah, of like how weird it is that he would, you know,
hmm
It's
attend that. And
interesting that when people say that, it's like they're kind of exposing the fact that they think that well, one, they're as we're observing, they're obviously being political, but they just assume that's the default position held by everybody, and like
hmm
that's just kind of the baseline, not realizing that no, you have a particular set of beliefs that you are espousing here, and but you're doing it in a way that you don't think you're on the hook to defend or make the
justify
case
or yeah,
for. You just assume that anybody who departs from that is just automatically wrong, but and then you're going to act like you're being put upon or persecuted if somebody challenges the your assumptions there. And uh yeah, I mean it's just I don't have a big huge, I don't have a larger point there. It's just an interesting observation to me. It's like they kind of lack the self-awareness to know that, like,
yeah. I think it's definitely this didn't cause it. This I think this was a reveal or a light, a bright light to shine on a problem. Um, I had an interesting conversation with one of my pastors on today's Monday, so yesterday, um, and we kind of talked about it broadly, kind of obliquely. I wasn't trying to get content for this show. It was just genuine conversation with my pastor, and uh, and he kind of said, he goes, I didn't agree with everything Charlie said, but obviously I agreed with a great deal of what he said. He said, but I think Charlie was probably would have, not viewed me in a perfect, in a good light because I don't, the pastor speaking, I don't preach politics from the pulpit. And I said, that's an interesting point. And I said, there is a line there, I think. And I know we've talked about that before. And I think we've talked about revisiting Christian nationalism as a show topic. And maybe that's a tangent off of this topic. Um, but I think there's a material difference between politics on the pulpit and having a strong view about social issues, right? So I think a person can say, "Hey, um, you know, tolerating evil for the sake of getting along with the world is not okay." But that's not saying, so go vote for Tommy Johnson in the local mayoral election, right? Like to me, there's a line there where you could say this behavior is not acceptable. It's antithetical to Christianity. It's against God. It's contrary to the teachings of Jesus Christ. And you can do that without saying, and then go circle in everything on the right side of the column when you
the
go to the voting booth.
the thing is, though, I mean, I do think, and I don't think you're going to disagree with this first part. If you're integrating the gospel into your life, into your outlook and your values and the the way that you want the world to be, that's going to lend itself to certain unavoidable political
Sure,
conclusions.
sure,
Um, and that pretty much gets you right up to the line
sure.
of where like you may as well just say, Yeah, if you and this is gonna piss people off. If you disagree with me, I'm happy to hear about it in the comments, or write us in, or maybe you can even be a guest on the show and let
Change
me
your
have
mind.
it. Yeah. But I think that, like, if you are a genuine Christian and if you have integrated the gospel into your life, there is no way you can vote to give Democrats power. Um, they're the pro-abortion party. That's abortion is obviously murder. Um, they're the pro. I mean, they're really the pro-slavery party, and I'm not just talking about the antebellum South. The idea that the government exists to confiscate wealth for redistribution, that essentially means that you don't have any right to private property except by the government's provision and permission, which can be taken away at any time as they see fit. Um, and there's all kinds of other things that I could go
No,
through, but the
I agree with that, but I think of it like this. I agree with everything you said. There's not a but. I like to think about the way that Jesus was interrogated by the disciples or the Sadducees and the way he responded, right? So the difference in what we see today, where a pastor preaches politics, is they tell you, vote for this person. I feel like if we were walking down the street with Jesus and we said, hey, Father, Rabbi, whatever, who should we vote for president? You would get like an hour-long answer that would be a story about morality and what's right and wrong.
yeah,
And then he would say, now, based on that, who do you think you're voting for?
I agree with that. Like
Which isn't
I
necessarily not holding your nose while you pull the lever, right? I mean, take our current president.
Hmm.
There's plenty, and especially 8 years ago when he ran, like there's plenty of stuff that's objectionable
Hmm.
from a Christian standpoint. But then again, President of the United States is not your pastor.
Right.
He's not your dad. He's not your uncle. He's not your mentor. He's the guy that's the CEO of the free
He's
world.
our Caesar.
I mean,
To
yes,
use the
right,
A&E environment, the biblical times, right? And I don't think there was an expectation that your Caesar was perfect,
right.
right?
I'm not worshiping the President of the United
yeah,
States.
you're not voting as an endorsement of his
Right.
lifestyle
But
or
who
his.
but who between him and the candidate with him in 2024
Hmm.
would make life more conducive to the Christian lifestyle in
Right.
America?
Right.
Yeah, who's going to protect your liberties?
Right.
And
I just get to that point, and
Right.
that's my
yeah,
thing about politics from the pulpit is educate your flock about what's right and wrong, and then the answer should be self-evident. And if we get to the point that there's two guys or two gals that are like spitting distance, then it's like,
Right.
right? Like I would love for that to be the situation, right? For them to be so similar that there's not really a difference, and it's like, who cares? Like, relative to the kingdom of God, neither of these really move the needle differently than the other. Cool, right? That's I think that's the
yeah,
only difference.
yeah, and just to be clear, and we're gonna have to move this along so that we can have something to fight about soon. But because this is way too smooth. But yeah, I think a preacher who just gets up and tells you who to vote for, that's not really any better than avoiding politics. The point is
I
to
agree.
to teach you to teach you the gospel, to teach you the values and morality of the Bible, so that the choice of who to vote for is clear.
Yeah.
The problem that I observe, though, it's not that pastors aren't getting up and telling you who to vote for. It's that they use the whole, well, we don't preach politics here. We just preach the gospel. They use that as an excuse to avoid, like, I mean, the our civilization is falling down around our ears. I mean, you have, like, just rampant perverse evil unleashed in our schools. They're distributing gay porn to elementary school kids. That's not an exaggeration. If that in I I'm not sure how shocking that will sound to our listeners, Some people are shocked when I point that out. They don't believe me, but then you raise the whole like, Florida book banning, don't say gay stuff, and you unpackage that. Well, what was really going on there? Well, that's because there were activists distributing gay porn in elementary schools, and the government had to step in and stop that. Um, you have stuff like this going on, and the church is largely silent about it.
Hmm.
There are a few standout people like Vadi Bacham, who recently passed away, who was an outspoken social commentator. People like him were kind of leading the fight on that. Well, what fight there was, but there just wasn't much of a fight going on, because uh, so many pastors and churches. I told you guys about me and a friend of mine have been trying out local churches. We were kind of going on a tour around Tulsa and checking out
Hmm.
the services. So many of them, it was like the whole sermon was basically just about mood regulation. Um, taking a verse out of context here, and teaching you how to like encourage yourself when you have low self esteem, or when you feel discouraged or whatever. And this is framed as spiritual warfare, just keeping yourself in a good mood because God loves you, and
Mm.
that's the extent of it. um, but they never talk about the real issues that are destroying our civilization. And I think those pastors are, I'm inclined to call them cowards and traitors. There are reasons I'm reserved about doing so, but my blood boils about at those preachers as if they are cowards. I kind of think they're just kind of dumb. Um, I don't think they're necessarily bad. I think that they are.
Well,
I
they're
think
objectively bad, but they're not intentionally bad.
Yeah, and I think I don't know that they are deliberately selling out,
Right. Right.
but that
Right.
basically I mean the religious industrial complex is a marketplace, and the marketplace rewards those who supply what the consumers demand, and what the consumers demand is this sort of dumbed down light Christianity that doesn't lay too heavy a burden on you to stand up against evil, or make any demands on you at all. It kind of tells you what you want to hear and gives you a good pick me up. Um, I don't think those guys decided to fashion their ministries in a way that maximize getting butts and seats, at least not consciously.
Right.
They're just rewarded by the marketplace because that's the kind of.
Where they don't, not, to stay on gospel topic in the least offensive way possible, to not lose the people that you're supposed to be embracing
Well,
according to. So I think people are, I think the pastors are, there's like this this attitude where you're supposed to be accepting of everyone. And I think
that's
that
yeah.
and I think that where that goes is is a dangerous place.
It was 100%
You
dangerous.
know, so
Yeah.
like, hey, listen, inviting everyone is not accepting every behavior, right? Of course, there's room on the pew for everyone because repentance is our way. So you can't just, people like, well, Jesus hung out with, all these people who did these things. Yeah, but did they keep doing it or did
Right.
they follow him?
Right.
Like the point of people that were doing these things was that they stopped doing them because of the word. So to say that, you have a thing that's not conducive to being Christian, well, repent. And we
Yeah.
invite all of you to come do that.
I think there- I, there's a lot, there's so many facets to this conversation, right? One of the guys that I've been sharing into our chat is this guy, James Owen. I'm going to link him just because the dude's, I think he's onto something. Um, It's an opposite message from what we're talking about here. I think there's risks with some of the language that he uses, right? Brian
Sure.
made a really good point. I dropped this into one of the chats and I said, "Man, this guy's fire." And then Brian said something to the effect of, "Yeah, and you got to be careful with fire." Right? And I thought that was a great it was a fair response. Um, it was still fire. Like
That was
the guy says some amazing stuff. One of the things that he talked about in one of his threads was that we were called to be peacemakers. We weren't called to be
mm,
peacekeepers, right? And you have to think about the difference of those two words, and you have to have a willingness to break eggs to make an omelet if you're going to keep the peace, right? Or if you're going to make peace rather than keeping it. Keeping the peace means, hey, everybody, let's be cool. Making peace means, hey, sit down or I make you sit down, right? So there's a difference there. Dre, when you were talking, and both of you were talking about, theology and whether these pastors are intending to be purposefully soft, I think it's just a derivative of the, the emasculation of society, which has bled into emasculation of the church, which has turned into emasculation of the word. And I think as a culture, to Brian's point about this being it's just a product of the economics of the society. We don't want to hear things that make us uncomfortable. That's not who we are as a culture. We want the easy way out. We all know the memes where there's, the one person has a booth and it says, the real answer and it's hard. And then the next booth says, I'm going to lie to you and give you the easy way out. And the line's,
right.
100 people
You know,
long.
fitness with pills, right? Like
How many people want
just injecting Ozempic into my fucking belly, and then I'm gonna get skinny
right,
instead of doing the things that are hard to do.
doing the work, right? It's easy to lose weight, right? It's just simple. Tell them it's very difficult. Well, of course it is. Everything worth
Nothing worth
doing.
having.
That's just who we are as a culture. And you know, weren't humans always kind of that way? Yeah, probably. Are we worse now? Yeah, probably. Right?
Yeah, and really the last few paragraphs of the Sermon on the Mount are like they sum this up. Enter through the narrow gate, beware of false prophets. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord. Where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. I mean, it's a perennial issue with humanity. It's just that the price of our freedom is that it's religion is a consumer's market. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, but the problem
Um,
is Christianity is not.
yeah, I agree, and there are specific things that we can change about the church to to head that off to correct that, but it's a hard sell because it requires discipline and effort and a completely different perspective on reality and truth and thinking and a transformation of consciousness, which I can get into later. But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we should conclude this show without going into what the church should be doing differently and how to implement it. Otherwise, we're just cursing the darkness. But
Oh, I do want to talk about of course there's the very famous, portion of Erica Kirk's speech where she forgave
Hmm.
the young man. And so now all of a sudden my feed is swimming again with forgiveness and turn the other cheek. And I think that it's being conflated with being a pushover
Hmm.
at the same time. Like, so just because you're supposed to forgive, does it mean that you're supposed to give ground? Are you supposed to not fight? Are you supposed, and I'm saying fight in all the senses of fight, not just, throwing hands, but if it comes to that, then perhaps you need to. There's a time, right? There's a time and place for all the things. And I think also forgiveness isn't just they're off the hook, that they can't be held accountable.
Right.
Forgiveness is for you.
Yeah, it's a very
You're the one
person.
that's tortured when you don't forgive someone. You're the one that your soul has to fight that anger, right? Where I just because you've forgiven somebody doesn't mean that they shouldn't be held to account. If that means prison time, if that means the death penalty, if that means wherever that goes, so be it. Um,
Well, hang on though. Hang on. Let's pull on that thread because I think, if I'm not mistaken, in that in that bit that Jesus, when he said, "Go the extra mile," give if they want your shirt, give them your cloak. If they want their cloak, give your shirt. Right. I think there is something in there about forgive their
sure.
debt. Right. So I think there is something that says if you have the ability to let them off, let them off. Um, I, I'm not sure that says that we should just, there's no rules and law, there's no law and order. But I think there was. I'd have to pull that verse and reread it if the our Christian Google doesn't remember it off the top of his head. Um, but I think there's
Do,
more to that. But
do you want me to quote it or do you want to finish your?
let me finish my thought. I do want to dive in on the turn the other cheek part because I think that was more central to what you were saying, Dre. Um, there's a really good, I forget the guy's name. I had it pulled up because I was going to talk about this a couple of weeks ago and we never got into it. Um, there's a concept that socially, and this is one of those, you have to put yourself in the mindset of an ancient Near Easterner and biblical times where Jesus was walking around. But the concept of turn the other cheek has to do with forcing them to strike you with your other hand, which was a concept of putting you at their equal, not as a lower class citizen.
Yeah, a slap in the face is not a threat to life and limb. It's an insult.
Right.
Um,
But
I
it
think,
had to do with they would use the back of their right hand, and if you turned your cheek, they would have to either open hand slap you with their right hand or use their left hand, and both had different meanings. Nobody slapped with the other hand, and if they used their
yeah,
the front of their hand, that's how you slapped a peer, not a slave.
I've tried to find a primary source for that, and haven't been able to confirm that. I don't know if it's that involved. Um, but um, but at the very least, like just on face value, a slap in the face is not there. It's not a threat to your life. It's
Right.
just an insult, and offering the other cheek, is to say like I can take your insult. It doesn't.
Also, I think there's implications where it's one thing for me to turn my other cheek, but it's another thing to turn my back on my family. It's another thing to turn my back on my community. If there's a guy that's about to do evil to an entire place, like the man that just drove into a freaking LDS ward in Michigan and opened fired, I don't think I'm supposed to turn my cheek there. I think that if I'm able to put him down, I put him down in order to help everybody else. So I think that there's also layers. I think there's righteousness in being a warrior, and not all of us are called to do the same things. Some of us are warriors and some of us are not. And if you are a warrior and you have the ability to be protective, I think that you have a duty, you're called to do that.
Yeah, I think it's I, I- obviously I agree with that. If love demands that if the people that you love, the people that you are obligated to protect and provide for are under threat, the most Christ-like thing to do is protect them. And if that means doing violence to somebody who is threatening them, then that's what you have to do.
I mean, if you got to
Um,
fashion a whip,
yeah. And like Jesus absolutely definitely affirmed the Old Testament on no uncertain terms. And in the Old Testament, um, the heroes were often warriors. David was God's favorite, and he was a warrior. But at the same time, you also have to consider that when David wanted to build the temple, God told him not to, and because he had too much blood on his hands. He didn't want a warrior to be the one to build his temple. It fell to Solomon, whose the name Solomon is it has a similar etymology to salam, meaning peace. He was a man of peace, um, which I take that to mean that we should never relish violence. We should never want to be violent. But it's an ugly fact of life that, I mean, violence is the default setting on the human condition. Um, we have government because government is in principle uh, a monopoly on violence. Because if we don't have that monopoly on violence held by a commonly agreed to authority, then the violence breaks out between all of us. And if you're if you're teaching your kids that violence never solved anything, so you shouldn't learn how to fight. No, violent.
Why do you call the police then?
Yeah,
Why are we outsourcing our violence if violence never solves anything?
yeah. Um, but but I do kind of struggle with when Jesus said, "Do not resist an evil person." If he wants to sue you and take your tunic, give him your cloak as well. If he forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Um, Now, I think there are a lot of considerations to take into account that this was Israel under the covenant of Moses. God had promised that if they're faithful, they'll have national sovereignty and prosperity and military success and security and fertility, and they'll prosper as a nation in all ways. The fact that they were occupied by the Babylonians and then the Persians and then the Greeks and then the Romans. This was a sign that they were not living up to the covenant. So this was sort of what they deserved. But at the same time, they had these models in the book of Judges and Kings where they were oppressed by a hostile foreign power and a warrior arose, was filled with the Spirit of God and drove them away. So they kind of dreamed of a Messiah who would rise up to do that. Um, so I personally struggle to balance these things. I don't I don't have all of the answers about when violence is definitely appropriate and when it's not, and what turning the other cheek looks like in the face of someone who is threatening my person. I do know that I do know that we have an obligation to protect those we love, and that we have to. And if Western history teaches us anything, it's that Christianity was almost wiped out by Muslim invasion. Um, I mean, it took far too long for Christian Europe to wake up and realize that this is an existential threat, and they need to pick up their swords and take the fight to them. Um, and we've kind of forgotten that lesson. We're inviting the invaders in and offering them tribute in the form of social welfare.
Yep.
And again, this is something that the church should be collectively speaking out about. Um, but instead, we have ministries.
it's not polite to talk about it, right? Like
Yeah, it's
we're back
political.
we're back to the problem that we said, is that it makes people's tummies hurt.
It was the pastor in Dearborn, Michigan, that was called an Islamophobe, and that
Hmm.
the mayor of Dearborn would throw a parade if that guy was booted out of the
Yeah.
community. This is a pastor
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
Christian community that's no longer Christian.
yeah.
And what was his crime? He didn't want somebody from Hezbollah to
It
be
was
named in his street.
it. To be fair, it was a journalist, an Arab journalist, but he had sung the praises of Hezbollah, so he was a Hezbollah sympathizer.
Yeah.
Fair.
But yeah,
So so just Brian, let me come back around, and I appreciate your.
but I think Dre's illustration here, I think he was taking it somewhere. What
Well,
happened?
and then the pastor in his follow-up was like, fine, I don't want to fight with that. I don't want to talk back on that. I want to just turn the other cheek, and God will sort this.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Awesome. God, yeah.
So on this turn the other cheek, I did a quick look up to figure out what I was talking about, what my reference. So the author's name is Walter Wink. He wrote a book called Engaging the Powers in 1992, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But essentially, all three of those things, right, in Matthew 5, you know, turn the other cheek, give your cloak, go the extra mile. Um, the way he describes each of these is that it's a power exchange. So it's a non-violent but non-passive way to, to stand up for yourself. And like I said, I mentioned the thing about this about the slap. The idea with the cloak also is that you would make yourself naked, which would shame the creditor to force such a terrible outcome on you. And then the go the extra mile, the context that he gives, and these are just notes, is that basically it was normal that a Roman soldier could compel a Jew to carry their pack for a mile while they were on a force march, but only for 1 mile. But if you did it longer, that soldier could be in trouble because he overpushed
Oh,
the law.
love it.
And so and so that's the argument that Walter makes, is that make them uncomfortable, right? Oh, he wants to make you carry his pack, carry it until he gets in trouble or until you fall over and die from it, right? Like that's his suggestion. I don't know. It's an
I
interpretation, right?
I have problems with that.
Why?
Or
Well, and it kind of goes back to the Erica Kirk forgiving Tyler Robinson thing. Um, it isn't. I don't think Jesus. I don't think he instructed that as a tactic for getting back at them in some way. I think it was. I think that the point of it was that you do this out of genuine love for them. Um, like I'm not going to carry your pack because you're forcing me to. I'm going to carry your pack because I love you and I value you as a person, even though you're my enemy. And I know that sounds totally bonkers and it's completely contrary to my own temperament. Because if a Roman soldier tried to make me carry his pack, my impulse would be to just beat the crap out of the guy in front of his fellow soldiers and say, "Ha, take that," which is one of the many areas where I need to grow spiritually into the likeness of Christ. But all of that, like the whole point of the Sermon on the Mount is, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? The whole point of it isn't you don't do this because you're under their power and you can't escape it. You do it because your love for them is greater even than the power that they have over you. And even though they are evil, that shouldn't affect the power of God in you is such that their evil cannot change your nature, and your nature is God's own nature, which is to love your enemies and to pray for those who persecute you for their sake because you value them. And I don't think Erica Kirk, I mean, I don't know her. I don't know what's, in her heart. But if she is, if her forgiveness of Tyler Robinson was genuine and from the Spirit of Christ, it wasn't to rid herself of the burden of hating him. At least not merely that. It's because she genuinely loves him and wants him to find redemption and doesn't want him to. She does to forgive someone is ultimately to say that I don't want God to punish them for what they did to me. I want God to forgive them and I want them to find redemption. That doesn't mean that he won't necessarily. Um, if they don't ask forgiveness, then all of their sins are still in their heads. But I do think that God will honor if we forgive someone in the sight of God. I think he honors that and he doesn't hold that sin over them. And if unless you forgive those who sin against you, your heavenly Father will not forgive your sins. The measure you use will be measured to you. Now, I'm pretty sure Erica Kirk has never murdered anybody in cold blood. so she could
Yet.
probably escape the yeah, she could probably escape the judgment of that particular measure. But the bottom line is it is. I mean, when Jesus tells us to love our enemies, he means it. It's not just a tactic for
Yeah,
getting back at the Romans.
no, I agree with you there, but I think, we've talked about this. I'm sure we talked about this on the show. I know we've talked about this in person, but there's love our enemies. Love doesn't mean accept,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
right?
definitely. And
So so
to take
so
it back to the squishy pastor thing, because I know a lot of what I said could be taken as supporting the squishy pastors, but
no, I'm just wrapping it around to make sure the point's clear is, loving someone in the way that I've always interpreted, specifically the Sermon on the Mount, but when Jesus talked about loving your enemies and those that don't love you necessarily, that doesn't mean run up and give them a hug and be like, "Oh man, I love you."
yeah,
It's
love is
it's it's
not.
it's
It's
more like I'm trying to draw the parallel between the professional respect between warring soldiers, right? Like
yeah,
as Marines,
love
there
is
can
not necessarily affection.
right, right.
Yeah.
We can go to war with another country and have, full on real, kinetic war with the opposing forces. That doesn't mean I hate them, right? As individual people, I don't hate, that guy and that guy and that guy. I'm still going to put rounds down, right?
Although
And
although as a battlefield tactic, it's probably better to hate them in the
it's
moment.
easier
But
in the moment, yeah. But I
yeah,
mean, that's a different issue, right?
I
Um,
will just vouch like never, never one time have I hated
right.
when that's gone down. I can tell personal stories where, we do we call it pred porn, right? So you get the full motion video of people getting bombed or blown up. Um,
But
never,
those were shortened words for predator
yeah,
porn, not
yeah,
not predatory porn. Just for
yeah, right.
clarification, since
It's
since
it's
Dre moved right past
it's
that
it's
that
full
trend.
full motion video of drone strikes
Mhm.
is what that is. And never one time, and I can say this with my head up high, have I ever celebrated anything
Right,
of that
right.
sort. In fact, I have actually said prayers for fallen enemy on a battlefield, and I was in a war on terror. So it's not like, conventional forces, I'm fighting that guy because he believes his flag is my flag. These are these are targets that we
Yeah.
proved were not good people,
I saw,
right?
apropos to that, I saw a heartbreaking video yesterday, and I hate that I watched it. It was a Russian soldier out in the middle of a field, and there was a Ukrainian bomb-laden drone that had come down on him. And this poor kid, I don't know if he was out of ammo, he just gave up. And he was just like, and the dickhead on the other end of that drone taunted him for like a full minute, zooming at him and stopping and
Yeah,
backing up and
yeah.
circle. And this kid is just sitting there. He's like, and then it finally ran all the way in, and the signal was gone. And I was like, man, was that all that necessary? Like, I get that you guys are in a little bit of a culture war kind of thing, but that's just a 19-year
yeah,
old kid that stuck out in a field because he was told to be there. The kid didn't wake up one day and be like, man, I want to invade the Ukraine.
yeah. I mean, it's I could I'm not surprised to find that the Ukrainians are being cruel to the Russians. I kind of understand it, but yeah, I think I pray to God I'm never in that situation where I can see a 19-year-old kid and he's given up where I'm like a cat playing with a mouse.
That's what it was. That's
Um,
what it was. Yeah. I saw one oppositely similar a couple of weeks ago, and this Russian soldier looks at them and he's like, and the drone actually shook its head no, and he threw his guns down, and he was like, if I surrender, am I good? And the drone was like, yeah. And it was communicating to him, and he just surrendered, and then the drone flew off. Like the kid was like, I'll quit, but like, don't kill me. And they were like, okay.
Hmm. That that's encouraging.
Yeah. But I mean, you know,
But the thing about squishy pastors, I think all the stuff that we've just talked about loving your enemies, they would they'd shout amen,
right.
but not mean it. I don't think they mean it. And that's what I loathe so much about them. Thomas Sowell said that if you want to help someone, if you want to help yourself, tell people what they want to hear. If you want to help them, tell them the truth.
Hmm.
Um, I think that the squishy pastors who would agree to love your enemies in the abstract, but are too afraid of offending people to call out sin. Like I think every church that isn't denouncing the transgender issue and wrestling with how we got here as a civilization, um, as just one example. I mean, I don't understand how you can claim to care about your fellow man, but be totally unconcerned by the rampant depravity and sin that's taken over our civilization, and that you don't speak to it from the pulpit at all. Um, but I understand why that is. I think that a lot of them, just the way that we conceive the gospel, they're just not equipped for it. They don't have the they don't they don't have the mindset or the outlook to see the relevance of whatever their understanding of the gospel is to addressing that. Um, and that doesn't get them off the hook. I think that underscores their culpability, that they have such a shallow understanding of the gospel and the Bible. But
Yeah. I
how
kind of thinking about it and like, we talked to you'd made the comment about wanting to talk about what they should do. I mean, do we think it's as simple as do we need to go back to hellfire and brimstone sermons? Like, I mean, I grew up with that stuff in the 80s going, Southern Baptist. We did those, they called them revivals once every, a couple of times a year. And it would be like
yeah
a week long, every night you'd come for a special sermon and it was a revival sermon. And they
yeah
called it a revival because it was basically to reignite that fire, right? And it was to get people really centered on what's at risk and what's at stake and the principalities at play. Um, as a child, it seemed unnecessary to me, right?
just for the record, that's not what I'm proposing,
No, I'm saying, I'm asking, I'm like, I'm throwing that
but
out as an idea, as a conversation starter. I'm saying, is that, is that what we need? Do we need to be that hell bent?
well, I think that there's a lack, in our churches, but also in our culture.
Mhm.
But I think it's encouraged by our churches. There's a lack of any sense of accountability to God for what we believe and what we proclaim.
Say more
Um,
about that.
like so I was having a conversation with somebody today online. It was the I don't know if you followed the whole Emma Watson, J.K. Rowling thing. Emma Watson did an interview where she kind of
Kind of shit on JK.
well, she's been doing that for years, but in this interview, she kind of walked it back a little
Oh,
bit
okay.
and talked about how, like, she's got these two, contradictory things where she loves J.K. Rowling, but
As a
J.K. Rowling
person,
is
but
as a
she hates what
person,
she's saying publicly
but
about
she's
the.
wrong, and I hope people can love me even if they disagree with me, which is kind of I want to like give her the benefit of the doubt that she was young and immature when she said those things, and she's kind of growing up and understanding that what she did was a just a the most uh, ugliest treachery.
Hang on, Brian.
But
Let me say this real quick. For any of our listeners, it's funny that I don't know this needs to be said, but just to be clear, J.K. Rowling was the author of the Harry Potter novels, and Emma Watson was the young woman that played the lead female role in the Harry Potter movies.
Hermione Granger,
Yeah, I just if
you casual.
there's somebody out there that might not have ever watched Harry
Yeah.
Potter and doesn't know what we're talking about. So the point is that J.K. Rowling, obviously pretty well established author,
Yeah.
but
She,
has
she,
but has really put herself out in the public as being anti-trans woman to the
well,
extent that
not
she
even that. Like she's anti like
anti-woman.
men. She's anti men going into
Yeah,
women's uh,
she's a true
exclusive
feminist.
spaces. Yeah.
She's a true
She
feminist.
she's what the tranny cult would call a turf,
They invented
a
the name for her.
a trans exclusionary radical feminist.
Yep.
And so of course, Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe, who played Harry Potter, and Rupert Grint, who played the other kid,
The
Ron Weasley.
little redheaded kid.
Yeah, they've all been denouncing J.K. Rowling as a transphobe
Yep.
when she made them. Like they owe their entire lives and careers to her. But anyway, that's just the
Sorry, I just that
background.
background was important
Yeah.
for maybe some of our listeners.
So I was having a conversation with somebody about this online, and it's somebody I interact with pretty regularly, and he's kind of a just a garden variety cookie cutter wokey. He denies that he's woke, but he is. But anyway, we got into the. I mentioned how Emma Watson betrayed J.K. Rowling, and well, no, she's just has her own independent thought, and da 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 da, and that launched into a discussion. But like he tried to sum up my position as, well, that's because you're a Christian. That's because of your religious background that you think that. And I'm like, whoa, 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 hold on a second. Before we go on, are you saying that the default position that everyone would have, that all reasonable people would have, is that men can transition into women, and that the only reason somebody would think otherwise is that they're indoctrinated into a religion? Is that what you're saying right now? And he's like, no, that's he walked it back, but basically well, there is no default position that a reasonable person would take, because everybody has different beliefs, and
More
you should have.
here comes the relativism, right?
Yeah, and it basically just like postmodern relativism, just textbook, textbook description of that. Although I don't know that this guy has ever heard the words postmodern relativism, but he was saying this as if like he's appealing to observations that I would have as well. And he even mentioned how like a lot of people, like their belief system is based on a suspension of disbelief. Um, and I'm like, so it kind of it struck me that, I mean, this is kind of a recurring observation I have, but I'm getting into all this because I think this is kind of representative of the culture. It never occurred to this guy that I actually believe the things that I say I believe, that I believe it based on evidence and reason. Postmodern relativism treats belief systems as being validated solely for the fact that people believe them,
Hmm.
with no reference to objective reality. And that's kind of the reason you have transgenderism. Um, if there's no objective reality, if it's all just a matter of subjective preference and
Then
opinion,
I can be whatever I want to be.
right? Well, why couldn't I be a woman trapped in a man's body?
Hmm.
If what I feel is where the validation comes from.
Hmm.
And it's easy as a Christian to sit here and recognize that in the broader culture and recognize that it's wrong, but like they're kind of following the church's lead to get that. Um, how many Christians have and I say this a lot, and it's people might be sick of hearing me relate this, but it's I'm going to do it till the day I die because I think it's worth it. So many Christians that I've asked, well, why do you believe this stuff? Why do you believe in God and Jesus and the Bible, et cetera, et cetera? This was especially a question I would ask before I was a Christian and people would invite me to church. And the response was typically, um, well, what, you don't believe it? Like they
Hmm.
thought it was just my obligation to believe that as an American. Um, but
What also goes back to the assumption that it's the default starting point, right?
yeah,
Like
like
this is just where all people are, and if you're not, you're a wacko.
yeah. But another common response is, well, it's because it's what I put my faith in. Um, well, no, that's not an answer. You're just restating the question. But so many people, so many churchgoers, um, they weren't taught why it's true based on any objective criterion. They were indoctrinated into it, and they attribute their indoctrination to the work of the Holy Spirit. I believe because the Holy Spirit confirmed it.
Hmm.
um, but they're not really taught why it's true. It's validated by the fact that you believe it.
Hmm.
That's the same postmodernism that everybody else has, but because the church is supposed to be the pillar and foundation of the truth, we're supposed to be God's instruments and agents for advancing his truth and making disciples of all nations, teaching them teaching them the gospel. We don't do that. We don't teach them why it's true. We teach them that it's valid because we believe it. But if belief is all that it takes to validate a set of ideas, well, the belief, that trannies believing they're the opposite sex than they are, I'm sorry, the opposite gender, because they invented a language spell to affect the transformation. But it's
Thanks, John Money.
yeah. Well, thanks, Aleister Crowley,
Yeah,
really.
there you go.
Um, but um, but that's we already did that episode, and I won't rehash it here. But yeah, but we don't give Christians that foundation in our churches. One, because there's not much of a consumer demand for it, because people, they're operating on this idea that a belief system is validated by their faith in it, rather than their faith in it being a response to the truth, to the objective truth of it. But because of that, like you know if that's the case, well, we've removed this sense of accountability to God for our beliefs. Like you can't, it used to be like in a more civilized age, you could impress upon someone that their honor is at stake for being intellectually honest.
Hmm.
God will hold them to account if they're being dishonest, if they're not acknowledging the truth of the evidence before them, and acknowledging the reason that should get them to the right conclusion. And those right conclusions are the particulars of the Christian faith. Because we don't do that, we've kind of unmoored our beliefs from objective reality, and our consciences from accountability to God. And where there's no accountability to God, there was no king in Israel, so everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And that's why our civilization is so balkanized and divided. Um, but people still need like a firm belief system to form their identity and to give their lives meaning. And that's why the left will fight to the death
That's
to
that's a that's a bar right there, dude. That's an. I think you've said that a handful of times, but I don't know that it's ever landed, at least with me, in the way it just did.
huh.
Let me restate what you said with a few less words just to make sure I got it. No, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just saying, and
It's fine.
for listeners that are following along. So you're saying because that I'm gonna cherry pick and hypersimplify postmodern relativism, which, to not use such big words, the idea that you can just, everything is fine if you say it's fine, and there's nothing right and wrong, and it's all just whatever, um, is largely to blame or a part of or a byproduct of the fact that without religion and a meaningful religion, a grounded religion that's rooted in truth and that one can defend critically,
And objectively.
uh, sure, objectively,
Objectivity is a key concept here.
that if with that missing, the human psyche has a need to glam onto something that gives them that same hierarchy of right and wrong and whatnot. And then you look at modern American culture, Western culture, European culture, whatever, and say, wow, all of this craziness is obviously an attempt, a subconscious attempt to create a system of morals and reason because they don't have religion from which to as their starting point, which then goes back to the concept that the United States and the freedom that was bestowed upon Americans was originally conceived to only be reasonable for a Christian group of people.
Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the governance of any other.
Damn. That's a lot.
My John Adams quote just now,
No,
or just the whole
all of
thing?
it
Okay.
together. Like that's I feel like that was a really big like culmination of stuff. Dre, what were you thinking?
I mean, even pagans had a baseline, right? So if you go way back to the ancient Near East, the Roman law and Greek, like they were held accountable because they believed in even that thing. So yeah, to
Well,
have no religion is pretty wild.
well,
To
there's the whole Socratic Euthyphro dilemma.
The what?
The Euthyphro, I'm sure you've heard of this before. There's this one in his, his dialogue with Euthyphro, Socrates. There's this guy named Euthyphro, and he makes a remark about like what you said, Dre. It's kind of true, but it was still sort of kind of shaky. Like they worshipped personified forces of nature. They didn't think of it in terms. They didn't get the idea of objective morality from their religion.
no, but
But
they
but
still didn't want to upset those forces of
right,
nature, so they were on their best behavior.
right. So Euthyphro mentioned something to Socrates. I don't remember who started it or what, but they're talking about a dude who killed his dad because the dad had done something that the son had deemed was offensive to the gods, and so to set things right, he killed his dad. But then this was a scandal because you don't kill your dad. The gods hate that. Um, and so Euthyphro offered an opinion about what was righteous. And so Socrates said, "Oh, you sounds like you know a lot about righteousness. Um, you know, can you tell me, is what he did righteous um, because it pleased the gods, or were the gods pleased with it because it was righteous?" And it kind of like raised the question of, well, what is morality? What defines it? Is it is it pleasing? Is it righteous because the gods are pleased with it, meaning it's just sort of up to their arbitrary whims, or are the gods themselves bound by a still higher standard? If so, what is that? And they kind of went back and forth, and it was a kind of an unsolved dilemma on paganism, because the gods are divided among themselves on what's righteous, and there's no particular reason why the gods would have any absolute claim on morality other than the fact that they're powerful. But Zeus, the king of the gods, he was known to, like, you know, rape maidens and behave in grossly immoral ways. So the idea of righteousness being that which pleases the gods was kind of iffy, but there's no dilemma if on monotheism. God is as the source of existence itself, who is eternal and made the universe and created all life. Good, he is goodness itself.
He's holy, holy, holy.
He is indeed holy, holy, holy. He is it's his prerogative since he made everything, but also um but also because he made everything, he is definitionally positively disposed toward everything. Everything exists for his purposes and will. So living according to his purposes and will is the only right way there can be. Um, and that's what every human being's conscience ultimately tells them. Like the very idea of morality itself, in order to when you step back and examine what does that even mean when we invoke morality, for morality to justify its own premises, there has to be an authority that transcends any individual person, any group of people, society itself. The idea for there to be any kind of moral progress to history presupposes an authority greater than man, and an authority that has a rightful claim on man, that's more than just power, but actual loving ownership of humanity. But because we've kind of divorced morality from that kind of transcendent accountability, we've fallen into moral confusion. And the churches, who are supposed to be the light, the lamp that gives the light of God's truth, to point the way toward the one to whom we are accountable, to warn mankind that God has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. When we divorce religion from objective truth, when we treat it as subjective and inwardly defined, and we can't and we don't equip people to know why it's true, well, we've lost the whole plot. And that's why all this is happening. And I know I'm being kind of repetitive, but um
Yeah, I did a little. I had to pull up that word because one, the urethropro
euthyphro.
dilemma, urethropro. It's spelled wild, but it's an old Greek dude. Um, William Lane Craig offers that it's a false dilemma,
Yeah.
which is interesting. So there's a third horn to the conversation. And
Well,
you said it. You said it all. I was just it's
yeah.
synthesized on this.
It it's a false dilemma on paganism, but I
No,
mean,
it's a true
I'm
dilemma
sorry.
for
Right.
paganism. It's a false dilemma relative to God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
You got it.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so the short version of what I just said is that of all of that is that the church needs to make apologetics its first priority for initiating people, and it should be the foundation of initiation into the Christian religion, and it should be centermost in discipleship. Um, Christians need to be taught apologetics. That's not the whole thing. I don't want to make it sound like that's the silver bullet that fixes everything. That's like one of three main components for how to fix the church. And it's the easiest and simplest one to implement. Um, but it's treated as an option at best by most churches. And this is largely because the Bible doesn't speak directly about apologetics per se. But that's only because it was so central to what they were doing. They didn't have a separate word for it. It was just what they called evangelism and discipleship. Um, but we've kind of spun it off because we have this weird idea about that we have a mindset that's entirely passive when it comes to the things of God. because we're so used to coasting on our 2000 years of institutional success. We think it's just sort of we think we don't have to fight for it or work for it, and we don't, so we don't know how to fight for it and work for it. It's like I said before, I was a Christian, and I would ask
Yeah.
people, well, why do you believe this stuff? And they would just, what, you don't? They just
Well,
take it for
it's
granted that you're going to believe it because you live in the West.
well, I think you're right. And I think the further why, if why this, when you said that apologetics is considered an option and all of that, I think it's more so because I think if we're being honest, there's probably a lot of pastors that couldn't explain the basic apologetics of why Christianity is real.
I think sadly, you're probably right.
And so it's again going back to the point that Dre had made earlier, this isn't necessarily some kind of like ploy by bad pastors to purposely weaken the church. But if it was, they sure are doing a good job.
But the result is a lot of what is obviously and objectively weakness, that passivity and anti-intellectualism, that feelings over facts thing that
Hmm.
characterizes so many pastors. I mean, these things are obviously vices. They're character defects, but we treat them as if they're marks of piety. Like everything is kind of framed as like if you call out evil, well, you're not being very Christ-like.
Or very,
Um,
yeah.
like not like having no like I think it was G.K. Chesterton who said that tolerance is the virtue of a man with no convictions. Um, and we have a lot of tolerant pastors.
Yeah. Who's that person? I need to look that quote up.
G.K. Chesterton, he was a major influence on C.S. Lewis and on Neil Gaiman, if you can believe it. Not not strong enough an influence on Neil Gaiman, but he G.K. Chesterton, he wrote two main books. The one that I read is The Everlasting Man, and it's awesome. Um, but everyone should read it. And he wrote another one that I bought afterwards, but I haven't read it yet. I forgot the name of it, but
Oh,
it's
this dude's got a bunch of quotes.
oh yeah, Chesterton's
I've never heard of this guy.
oh yeah, he's the man.
Huh.
No tolerance. Yeah, tolerate everything. Just tolerate it.
Yeah, otherwise you're a bigot. Um, so yeah, did we solve squishy pastors, or do we
I,
have
I mean, I think we certainly addressed it. Dre, do you have any more thoughts on this? This was kind of your
Um,
this was your gear that was ground that got us started.
uh
no, I'm still mad at him.
So,
Like, stand up.
right.
Just stand up. But I think that's my message. And to people that don't stand up for themselves and then use Jesus as their reason. As if Jesus said, "Hey, lay down and let people walk on top of you." And I don't think he said that.
yeah.
This here's a GK quote. When men stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing. They believe in anything.
Yeah.
That's bars right there. That's
Dude,
that's
big damn facts. Like
straight fire.
that is the I'm gonna have to dig into this dude. I'm gonna have to grab one of his books.
Read The Everlasting Man.
Okay.
You will be glad that you did. Um,
He- Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
and if you are a pastor and
We got any pastors out there listening to us?
and you find yourself defending those who condemn Charlie Kirk as a racist and a Nazi, um, you well, you probably ought to quit being a pastor.
I think this is the part. I'm gonna read his post. For some, Charlie was a hero, calm, articulate, respectful in hostile territory, unflinching in his defense of Christian values.
All
They
true.
saw a committed Christian, a faithful husband, a caring father, and now a martyr. Their grief carries pride, even hope that his death has awakened a movement of little Charlies, and I'm doing that in scare quotes, rising up. For others, Charlie was a threat. His words carried wounds, his rhetoric stoked fear, his nationalism blurred the lines between Caesar and Christ. For them, celebrating Charlie rings hollow. Little Charlies, scare quotes, don't sound like hope, but like a nightmare. Now, then he asks this question. Now, how can Christians have such vastly different views of the same man? Because somebody's not pointing out the real reason what he's saying and what he's saying. That's how they can.
Are
Because
my
they
I'm sorry.
because you're allowing them to, Pastor.
Are my comments still visible on there?
No, I looked for him.
No, when you're blocked, you disappear.
Yeah, I as soon as you told me you were blocked, I looked for them and I tried to screenshot them myself, but they're not there. And then all of the comments are like, "Oh yes, that's it. That's the truth that I wanted to hear. That's you're speaking. Oh yeah, thank you. Blah blah blah."
Yeah, and really all that post does is allow this, spiritual ambivalence.
Set them straight, then, Pastor. Tell
Yeah,
them why they're wrong.
you guys.
If somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I think drugs are good," okay, then you should set them straight when they are wrong.
Yeah,
How can two sets of Christians view the man in two different ways? Because they're not looking through the proper lens. That's why.
well, my
Unless Pastor, you're in camp two, and if you're in camp two, then just say it. Just like my man on Instagram, just say you hate basketball. But you
my
know,
answer to him was that one of those sides are just not Christians.
oh yeah, he got mad at that one. Like, and
Well, except
he used the term you're dismissive of, and that also struck a chord with me too. Like just because I'm acknowledging something and refuting it doesn't make me dismissive. To say that I don't agree with a stance and here is why you are wrong is not
Right,
me being dismissive.
right.
yeah,
It's saying I
we
heard you and I
we
don't accept it.
we went back and
Correct.
forth a few times, and he never. The thing that struck me, and this is kind of a common tactic, um, especially of pastors that you disagree with and they can't refute you. They never address what you're saying on its substance. Like they never like engage the actual argument. They answer with a bunch of like
Hmm.
a bunch of nice sounding soft soap. Thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate you
Oh,
sharing
and
them. And derpa 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 on
Yeah,
but they never critique the substance of what you're saying. They critique the fact that they really attack your character, but
they
it's
do it in
so
that passive aggressive.
yeah.
while
Yeah,
defending everyone else's
yeah.
character.
Well,
Like
Dre, it's funny. You and I just had a completely different argument about sports stuff,
Yes. Yes.
right? And Brian, I won't get into the specifics of it. Dre has a wrong opinion about a rule in the NFL, right? And I'm being
but
dismissive of him.
I
He
do
is being dismissive right now,
I
but
do want to elaborate on that tactic though when you're
Yeah,
done
no,
with
but
your
but the point is we were having this disagreement about a rule, and Dre's like, look, this is why, and I'm like, no, I get that it's a rule. I think it's a terrible rule. It's my least favorite rule in all of NFL. Dre's a big fan of the rule, and we were going back and forth about it. About like he's like, well, this has this and this and that. I'm like, I'm fine with all of that. None of that has anything to do with this. Like, this is just the one thing that I think is dumb.
which you're wrong, but it has everything to do with that.
Right, but the reality, but in none of that conversation were either of us saying, well, you're clearly not a fan of football, or you don't
Exactly.
watch the NFL, so that's why you don't understand how important this rule is to the health of the sport. It was
In
like,
fact, the conversation displayed just how much we both watched the game.
right. And, and, you know, were there straw man attacks? Yeah, purposely. But
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
that's a different thing,
That's just a
right?
tactic that we use. I think the
Go
word
ahead.
gay was used.
Right. A few times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Go ahead, Brian. What were you gonna say?
Um, well, like he never addresses the substance of the argument. He just sort of makes it but he attacks your character, but it's passive aggressive. It's dressed up in this slimy kind of cheap perfume, lubricated, like pastoral language. Like he's concerned for the state of your soul, that you're
Right.
being so unchristlike and being,
Smothering you with charitableness, right?
yeah.
Charitability instead
It
of
was pretty gross.
But
It was pretty gross.
and there was this one part where I kind of cut through all that, and I'm like, look, I don't care what you think of my character. The 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 bottom line is the people who say these things about Charlie Kirk, they they want to believe that because they don't like what he exposes about them, which
Mhm,
is that they are not Christians.
mhm.
Their values are not those of Christ. They are leftists who go to church. That's what it, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was his response was more of this passive aggressive kind of pastoral care, addressing the wounds of my soul and all this stuff without addressing what I actually said. And
Because if he agreed with you in that spot, he would have lost 1,700 followers immediately.
yeah.
Mm.
But he did this thing like, well, you're being very divisive, and and I'm trying to bring people together, and I need you and I to be on the same team, and it was this very
That was
like
another thing that was gross that I
it was this
noticed.
very like it's the way that like it's the way like a daycare worker would talk to a toddler, and I'm just like, look, dude, you and I are not on the same team at all. We'll get that out of the way right now. Um, if you want people to take you seriously,
That's how you get
don't
blocked, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you
don't
get blocked by a man of the cloth.
don't talk to me like I'm a toddler in your daycare. I'm a 50-year-old man. My own father doesn't talk to me that way.
Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. I'm not a kid.
And then he blocked me. And but
'Cause
uh but that's a thing that happens a lot with pastors and seminary professors that I've interacted with. Like I had a debate with somebody, and it was I think it was the Christian Apologetics Alliance. This professor at some Bible college somewhere, he made a post about how, I noticed my students, they're just, they're not excited about going to heaven, and that this really bothers me. And so he wrote an article, about all the things that the Bible says about what heaven will be like, and that he distributed it to his students so they'd be excited about heaven. And so I I commented, well, the Bible doesn't actually teach that we go to heaven. That's not in there anywhere. And I linked my article to my blog. And so, like, a couple weeks long debate ensued between me and like a bunch of other people. He would kind of chime in every once in a while. Um, and, like, he would cite the usual passages that don't really talk,
Mhm.
in my father's house are many rooms, I go there to prepare a place for you, that kind of stuff, which is, for the listeners, that's not about heaven, it's about the temple. But I have a blog article about it, we'll link it in the description. Anyway, moving on though. This kind of went back and forth for a while, and I kind of pointed out to him that, well, you're not getting this idea of heaven from the Bible. You're presupposing it and reading it into those passages. If you read those passages on their own terms, they don't actually talk about anyone going to heaven in death as a disembodied spirit. They're all either about the resurrection, or heaven coming here when Jesus returns, or about the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. None of them are about that. And so after a couple weeks of back and forth, he finally concedes, you know what, you actually um you have a really good point. You're he said something to the effect that, yeah, I'm right, but I could stand to be a bit more humble about how I make my presentations, and it's again, it's all about attacking my character, telling me how, like, he's shifting the argument from the
Yeah,
substance of what we're talking
that's a
about.
good point, Brian, but you're such a dick.
I mean, he's
That
not wrong.
he was in this because I was very, like, I know, yes, I'm well aware of my character defects. I was extremely conscientious in this exchange to not say anything personal about him. At no point did I insult his intelligence, nor did I question his learning or his erudition or his
or
wisdom. I only addressed, and like I'm
or his
absolutely
strength
positive.
or his limp-wristed fucking stance. Like,
I I examined the logical contours of his arguments and
The
pointed out
contours.
the contours, the logical path that his arguments took, and why his logic was in error, and why he wasn't, that he wasn't addressing what the scriptures actually said. I mean, it was absolutely none of it was about him as a person.
yeah, but
It
do
was
you do understand though that that could really hurt somebody's feelings because I mean if they're taking that kind of stuff to heart where they have holes and flaws in their
I,
logic and
I'm just envisioning that scene in The Wolf of Wall Street where he's like, "Oh yeah, I drove home. It was no problem." And then what really happened was he was swerving all over the road and jumping his Lamborghini and pulled it in backwards. And
as God is my witness,
whoa,
I can assure you, if I'm wrong, may God strike me down where I sit right now. I said absolutely nothing personal against him as a person, as a man.
so
I
he
did
probably brought that with him to the
I didn't
conversation.
insult I did not insult his intelligence, anything about him. I only addressed his arguments and the substance of them, and where his logic was wrong. And so then his response was, finally, when he realized after a couple of weeks of this that he was actually wrong and I was right, he conceded that, but then shifted it to, well, I wasn't humble enough, and I should. So I responded, I would have actually respected you a lot more if you just left it at the first
there it
statement.
is.
Well, but he made it personal by attacking my character. Um, by it was no longer about the subject matter that we were discussing. Now it was about, he didn't like my delivery and what this revealed about me as a person. So basically, he was personally humiliated by the fact that he was wrong. I did not set out to humiliate him. I addressed the issue because I thought the issue was important, and I thought he was mistaken, and I thought, like, if you care about the gospel, if you love Jesus Christ and you want to serve God, you want to be right about this. We all do. And this is and I think this is a major problem with the church, that we just don't understand what the gospel is, and we teach stuff like that.
Brian's like one of the door-to-door salesmen. Someone's like, Brian, is this really important? I don't know. Do you love Jesus? Do you care about the gospel? I think you should pay attention to what I have to say.
And
I mean, if you don't love Jesus, I'll walk on like whatever. Like
Right? I mean, just tell me,
it's
you know,
your
get lost.
salvation, not mine. Like, so,
but the thing is, I noticed that, like, every time something like this happens, every time there's like a theological dispute with someone, with one of these squishy pastors, and then they realize that they're beaten, they have to reestablish dominance in some way.
the fact that he said that you should have been more humble and it tells me a lot about his own humility. Like
Yeah,
you're the one that's not feeling humility because you're the one saying that he's telling you in that way when maybe you should just concede. And how about thank you? That's what should be coming out of your mouth, Pastor.
I
Thank
agree.
you. Say thank you, and I'll go pray about it, and I will repent for my ways, and I will
Either
lead my
way,
flock.
I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to.
Exactly.
And so I responded to him that, I would have respected you a lot more if you just left it at the first part, but now you're turning it, you're making it personal by attacking my character when I didn't say anything personal about you. There was no reason, there was no justification to turn it
Ryan's just
into
standing there
that.
with his cloak, and they say he's like, "Oh, those are fighting words," and he just whipped it back, and like, doo-doo-doo-doo, some Clint Eastwood music going. Oh, so now you want to get ugly? Now I got drama. Now I got to cut you.
And so he blocked me.
Gosh, I think blocking is such a weak move.
It is like you are
Unless
basically
somebody
saying
is super vulgar
Right.
or
Right.
pedophilic, or
oh
I can
yeah,
see that. But I have
that
never blocked anyone before for just making me mad.
yeah,
Like,
I like
I don't rage quit. Like,
that the pastor that you were talking about, he actually threatened to delete my comments and block me. And then he did all the passive aggressive talking to me
that's
like a
so weak
toddler.
sauce.
And so I did respond to him like,
And he's a large dude with a beard. He has drinking in his title.
um,
But I
I
don't
did
have
tell him
respect.
that
I think he's a baby back bitch. But that's me. He can come at me like whatever.
We should send our horde of fans after his fans.
yeah, it's on. It's a war. I
It,
did tell him that if you delete and block me, well, you're basically announcing that you're a coward
Oh, that was
who
that
can't
was
right.
contend with what I'm saying.
Brian. That
And
was your
so
chance to tell him if he strikes you down, you'll become more powerful.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
I was kind of mad at him, so I didn't feel like being playful.
In this one, I forgive him.
That's the difference
She
between you
declared
and
as she
me.
sobbed. 80,000 people stood on their feet cheering through the tears. That was a lamb, the spirit of Jesus, the echo of the cross. But then another moment came. Our president stood before the same crowd and declared, I hate my opponents and I don't want what's best for them. But then it's funny because he doesn't finish that quote. Like the president acknowledges like, yeah, you're way better than me. Like I don't want
Yeah,
what's best for that guy.
and
Like that was like
and I
him.
and I greatly appreciate Donald Trump saying that in the spirit of, look, I'm not a role model.
He's
She's a
I
role model.
And again, the
I'm
stadium
not.
erupted. That was the lion without the lamb. The roar of the empire cheered as those who had plotted the cross. Like,
Oh, that's another thing
I
that
will
jumped
say
out.
all that drama background really pays off when you read the quote though, Dre. I need to hire you to just read my social media to me.
the Bible
But
repeatedly
that
uses
isn't
lion and lamb language to describe the Messiah. One symbolizes strength and power, the other, innocence and sacrifice.
that
Fuck
is a
out of here,
trope.
man. Like, what?
That is a trope that I've noticed. Like I'm pretty sure this guy is what we would call a liberal pastor. I bet he officiates gay marriages. But he keeps mentioning how like Charlie Kirk supported Empire,
Empire.
and
Yeah,
he keeps
yeah.
mentioning
It's the
Empire.
Caesar and
He
the
supported
Oh,
Empire. Which
right.
what do you like? What is that? It's just this
I'm so
catchphrase.
mad. I'm mad again. Like,
I'm glad I didn't read it.
It's
I'm gonna
this
send it
kind
to you.
it's this
I'll be like,
trope
I'm not gonna read it. Like,
they use to kind of to it's like a dog whistle that like
right.
I'm anti-colonization
Right.
and
Right.
When
Western
Jesus touched down
civilization.
to earth, everyone wanted the lion, then wanted the Messiah who would take Rome by force, crush the oppressor, and establish the throne of power. Instead, Jesus showed them something radical. He had the lion's power, but he chose to lay down. He gave them not the lion they demanded, but the lamb they desperately needed. They wanted a lion. He gave them a lamb. They called him meek, which isn't weakness. It's what happens when you have the strength to bring down words, but resolve to lay down for the very people who hate you.
Now, I don't think any of that is bad
It's
in
not
of
bad in and of
itself.
itself, but
It
in the
what's
context of this, and he's basically saying, "Hey, Charlie Kirk supported Donald Trump, and
Right.
the thing that's
Trump is this fake lion, and which makes Kirk not a
right.
lamb,
Through
and
transitive
therefore,
laws of
yeah,
language, Kirk is
the
the
the thing
antichrist.
the
That's what
thing
he's
that's
setting up.
bad about that is that he doesn't believe any of that. That's just rhetoric to that he cherry picks. I wonder what he thinks about the second coming when Jesus does come in power, and it says that he's going to shatter heads on the day of his wrath.
when the
Um,
same crowd can cheer forgiveness in one moment and hatred in the next, it tells us something uncomfortable. The two Charlies we all see are really a reflection of the two natures inside of us. What does that mean, Kobe Bryant? What is
Well,
yeah,
he's trying to use really eloquent writing to say, comes from both sides. That's all he's trying to do,
yeah.
which
And
is
by the
like
way,
how bold to not take a side. Well done,
and
Pastor.
and that's and I think that's my you know what that point is something that really strikes me too is that all these people they come out and like I speak truth to power, but they always take the easy side,
Hmm.
yeah,
right?
they
They
they're
always take the popular position of
they
I'm a centrist. I you
they
know
they speak truth to power when they know that power is no actual threat to them.
Hmm.
Um, because they know that right wingers are not going to burn down their business or ban them from social media
like
or
oh we're gonna lift the bans. Whoa, Alex Jones is back? No, you're gone.
Hmm.
Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones got back on YouTube? No.
so this both sides thing. Um, we should briefly address that because that
I
is
don't I
that's
don't think we can get into that right now.
it's sort of germane to what we're talking about, but just real quick, all of those studies that from the Department of Justice or Homeland Security that they cite that report that right-wing violence like is vastly overshadows left-wing violence. Do you know how they get to that? Well, I'll tell you. Um,
Were you asking us?
yeah, yeah, I
Because
was.
we know if you want to keep talking, just keep talking.
Um, well, one, they don't count all the BLM and Antifa violence where they were
Right.
burning down cities in 2020 during the Summer of Love because of all of the leftist AGs and prosecutors didn't press charges. So that's just not counted in those figures. Meanwhile, they count neo-Nazi gang activity as right-wing violence. Um, like they lump the Aryan Brotherhood in with like Christian homeschooler
Hmm.
moms.
But
Um,
they don't put the Bloods and the Crips
right.
in
Right.
with the left.
Now, just for some perspective, in case the dishonesty behind this isn't apparent, all gangs are tribal and they they organize by racial identity and they exclude people who aren't their race. Um, you got the Hispanic Tren de Aragua and MS-13. You got the Chinese Triad and the Japanese Yakuza, the Italian Mafia, the Bloods and the Crips. This is obvious.
Actually, I'm going to be that guy. The Bloods don't. That's actually what makes them different, and what's why they were the smaller of the two gangs during the mid to late '80s and early '90s. But
Because they let white people in.
they would let anybody in.
Well, that's cool of them.
Yeah,
I take I
they're quite inclusive.
I apologize to the Bloods. Wait, was it the Bloods or the Crips that
The
you said?
This
Bloods.
bloods, the
Bloods.
bloods.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I apologize.
That's also where the Mongols MC came up from because all of the motorcycle gangs are white supremacist organizations.
Okay. So any Bloods listening, I apologize. Not to anybody else though.
Just them.
Just the Bloods. But
Hoover Street, those guys,
but
Piru.
a
Nauru.
much stronger
That's
case could be
that's Tupac,
made
baby.
that but yeah, as you said, they don't count all of them as left-wing violence,
Mhm.
but a much stronger case could be made that Hispanic gangs are left-wing because a lot of them they grew out of revolutionary guerrilla groups in South America and Central America. So
Sandinistans and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but
And they were
really,
all communist, right? They were all
yeah,
Marxist and
yeah,
communist.
they were definitely left-wing groups. But but so but neo-Nazi gangs, their violence is just regular criminal stuff, fighting over
all
drug
all
terms.
nine of them.
Yeah. And most of their violence is in prison. As
All their
gangs,
violence, man. Like,
the amount of violence that they commit pales in comparison to all the other criminal gangs operating out there. But when you count them as a political group, which they are not, they're obviously far outstrip most left-wing groups. I mean, most political groups. But the point is, they gerrymander the data to like
yeah,
they cast as wide a net as possible to characterize anything and everything as right-wing violence, while they use as narrow a scope as possible to classify left-wing violence. And this is obvious when you look at what's there and what's not. The fact
I
that they
think
don't
they.
include BLM or Antifa in that, and they do include the Aryan Brotherhood
And the Proud
alongside,
Boys.
and the Proud Boys, who show up to stop Antifa.
and and
Right.
and their violence is always mutual violence,
Right.
Yeah,
and only their violence is counted.
right.
Yep.
Like,
So
what?
so
I, I
don't let
think
anybody
yeah,
spring this both sides crap on you.
they tell on themselves. For example, this last Yahoo in Michigan, obviously he's right wing because he had two American flags on his truck. To me, that's very telling. Like,
Yeah, we hate
if
America.
if if you're even remotely patriotic, then obviously you're right wing. So they've like conceded that to rightness, which is just it's just sad. Like,
Yeah,
and the dude wasn't. I think the only thing America about him, he was a U.S. Marine. So uh,
yeah, that does kind of
so
get me. Like,
so the so the flags, but they bring up his social media and he's got a Trump shirt. But if you zoom in on the Trump shirt, it's an anti-Trump shirt. So it's and I'm not even commenting on his political affiliation because I think that the act wasn't political. It was personal. And which brings me to another thing where, I mean, if we think about the churches or the religious institutions that have been shot up and the outrage that's formed from them, the Covenant School, not a lot of outrage, except on the right, some pundits, right, in podcast sphere. But the Dylan Roof, right, huge. It's the one people point to.
Mhm.
Uh, the synagogue, that was so when you add a racial element like, blacks or Jews, then now it's a huge deal and it's all about white supremacy. But when the white Mormons are shot while they're worshiping and their chapel burned, it's like a
well,
big shrug.
Trump does hate Mormons. Everybody knows that.
But apparently everybody hates Mormons. And that's where and I think another thing that's popped up that got pretty ugly in the last couple of days was Christians using that opportunity to mention how non-Christian Mormons are. And I no, there's plenty of time for that. And we've done it on this show, right? But you can't take a tragedy and then like, well, it's not really Christian violence because they're not Christians. And here's what I'm gonna say about that. And it's popped up too much.
Mhm.
Um,
It's interesting. I haven't
so
seen that. I wonder if you're more attuned to it or if your feeds are different. But
uh,
it's unfortunate. I'm not
yeah,
suggesting it's not true. I just haven't
Mike
seen that.
Michael
I
Knowles actually brought it up today as
Okay.
well.
I
So
I
so
have
it's
had that conversation, to be honest with you,
yeah.
but
So
I didn't like jump in to say no, they're not Christians. but yeah, when there were remarks made that this is that uh, obviously I condemn it. There's no, but I don't know that characterizing it as, well, I don't know. It's not to minimize the tragedy, but yeah, that I think that is a distinction worth making.
I,
Um,
so I'm going to disagree with you, and here's why, Brian.
okay.
Um, Perception is the rule here, not theology. And if to the casual or to the non-Christian or to the anti-Christian, if they lump Mormons and Christians together for the purposes of propaganda, then it's the same game. It's the same team.
Yeah, I mean, I made that point myself that like that the person who did that, I don't know if he, who knows if he even understood the difference between
Well,
Mormons and
he
Christians.
was, but he did say that Mormons were Antichrist.
Hmm.
So he could be Christian himself or Christian adjacent or
Right.
been propagandized
Right.
by something. So to come out and say no, they're Antichrist, which gives them, gives him a justification
Yeah.
somehow
Which is
to
terrible because we all know it's Judaism that's the Antichrist.
Why am I laughing?
Which,
Like,
I mean, if somebody wants to stand up for the truth of Christianity, murdering people is not that's
It's
not
kind
the way
of,
to.
yeah, whole
I
fruit,
mean,
fruit and trees, right?
I mean, I would say if you got to choose between being Mormon or murdering people because you're so zealous for Christ, you should be a Mormon.
Right.
That's
Yeah. That's actually a good take.
like you're kind of missing the point there, buddy. But
You're so far off that you've circled around to the other side.
yeah, and you are in fact discrediting Christians by,
Hmm.
but I mean, I don't want to, of course, I don't want to minimize the tragedy, and I wouldn't, and I want to object to anybody who did. But I mean, I think there are certain circumstances and discussions where, yeah, it is valid to point out the distinction when it comes up. But yeah, I totally agree with your point, Matt.
I
To people
mean,
who don't make the distinction, this could very easily be seen as anti-Christian violence.
Hmm.
But
I think
and
timing matters on this too. But it because when you do bring up that distinction, just to bring up the distinction, I think that's also missing the point
I,
of the
I
tragedy. And it does, I think that sentiment does minimize the tragedy. Whether you intended to or not, I think ostensibly it does.
well, I mean, I can uh, accept the criticism that perhaps I've been insensitive in how I addressed it.
Sure.
Um, I'm certainly not above that. Um, I- but
Well,
yeah,
I was about to block you and delete you, so I'm glad you said that.
Which is
yeah.
just ridiculous. Instead of having the conversation and
But to kind of circle back to the main topic, though, like somebody listening might be thinking, well, why are you talking about this whole both sides violence thing when you're talking about squishy pastors? Well, that is kind of part of the overall continuum of what's going on in our country right now. The cultural narratives that kind of put us in these camps. I mean, the country was pretty the division in our country was pretty starkly exposed with the death of Charlie Kirk. The people who celebrated his death, and some even are calling themselves Christians, as that one squishy pastor highlighted for us. Um, and then the rest of the people who are mourning because we recognize a brother in Charlie Kirk. Um, there are two Americas that exist side by side, living in completely different moral universes. And this exposes the spiritual war that's going on in our civilization, and far too many churches are trying to sit it out. Um, they're on the sidelines trying to be conciliatory and framing it as if they're above the fray. And oh, I don't get into politics. I just preach the gospel. No, you're a coward. You're just you're hiding behind the gospel to avoid getting bloodied. But the fight is upon you, whether you want to be in it or not. You
You
can
want to you want to get in the muck or not, or you want to stay on the sideline? And
you can keep retreating if you want, but you're betraying your people and your Lord. Um, we need to come together. We need to recognize the state that the church is in, and we need to repent. We need to we need to rise up, and we need to recognize that our system is perfectly designed to yield the results that we are getting. The results are bad. The system needs an overhaul. We need to be willing to acknowledge that and make those changes. And it's going to be uncomfortable, but the choice is we lose our lampstand. Um, it it's that simple. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap up.
you got any save rounds, Matt?
I don't think so. No, I think I think it's an important topic. I think, yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing personally for me, I've been really over the last, 10 years, 5 years specifically, becoming more extremist with my Christianity. It certainly took a leap forward this last month. Um, and the strange thing is, I probably fell into all the same traps that we've talked about not wanting to be an extremist because I'm trying to, attract more flies with honey than vinegar and all of that kind of stuff. Um, this last year and then into this last month, as I'm starting to really like stretch my extremist muscles, it actually feels really good
Mm,
in a strange
mm,
way.
mm.
yeah.
Like I'm being serious. Like
Oh yeah,
No, I I
which
I
is
I know what you're talking about, and I love it.
and I'm
It's
like, why have I been holding this back? Like
you're not an extremist, Matt.
I
You just have convictions
no, I'm
and principles.
using language that others would understand, right?
Yeah.
Like that would carry. And the real reason I'm using that word is because I'm no longer afraid of being called an extremist. That's the reason I'm saying it that way is it was
Ex-
all about social, and maybe doing this show for the last 2+ years has really kind of knocked the fear off of me, or the trepidation or the reservation or the whatever. Um, but yeah, I've become very comfortable in leading with my faith. Anyway, that's
I
kind of
think
okay.
I think extremist is the word used by people who don't understand what genuine conviction and commitment to
yeah,
principles are,
Sure.
yeah,
to vilify those who do.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it's
so
certainly to vilify, gaslight, whatever, right? To cow us, which is funny because we use the word fan so freely and comfortably when we're talking about sports and things that we're fans of, right? When we should be bigger fans of God. right? We should be
That's
fanatical.
why I always say, the Los Angeles Dodgers is the most important, unimportant thing in
Yeah.
my life. And I acknowledge that. And
Yeah.
I recognize how absurd it is that I care that much about that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that um I'm just not afraid of those labels. You can call me what you want. You want to call me a racist, cool. I know what I am. The people who love me know what I am. The people I talk to every day know that I am. I have a billion liberal friends all over my social media, and none of them have blocked me.
I
Maybe maybe maybe
You have a billion fans?
a billion,
Holy
one
crap.
billion fans. I don't
I
know why they
actually
don't watch my show, but
I
it's
I actually love it when people get like call me an extremist or an istophobe or whatever they want to call people to marginalize or belittle somebody who believes something they don't agree with. I love when they do that because the moment you insult me, well, now you've put this on the table for discussion. Now you've invited me to defend myself, and I'm willing to have the conversation with anybody who will entertain it. I'm not gonna insult you. I'm not gonna beat you up over it. I'll but if you insult me and you tell me I'm an extremist or some other label by which to belittle me, well, now you've opened the door. You've put this on the table for discussion, and if you don't want to have the discussion, well, I think that says more about you than me. Um,
I'm
and
just built for this. Like I grew up Jehovah's Witness, like right, and in the fact that I'm biracial, and in the fact that you know I don't agree with black political views, so I've already been called the names. So I'm just used to it, and there's no fear. So bring it.
yeah, and normally when I respond to an insult by engaging in a discussion, if they take me up on it, by the end of it, they find that like they agree with a lot more than they thought they did. The things that they're trying to distance themselves from are not so strange as they think. Um, I think I've
Be-
managed
be-
to.
because that's the actual compassion. They use that word, but it's like they don't know what that means. Like compassion isn't just letting people get away with stuff.
Yeah, compassion is just how they arrogate unearned moral authority to themselves
Right.
without really discussing things on their merits. But speaking of most important, unimportant things, this is a totally different topic, maybe a teaser for a discussion. Our Superman review got me thinking about, like I mentioned stuff about how comic book superheroes are kind of like academics have acknowledged that they kind of they're the updated version of the the pagan gods,
Okay.
but but like the stories of the gods were not for children. In fact, they would initiate people into adulthood by teaching them these stories. That kind of got me, that made me want to kind of dig into that again, and I've been reading up a lot on like ancient rites of initiation and what that meant. It like there's and it kind of made me realize a lot of things about like superhero comics that I guess I kind of understood at an unconscious level. But anyway, it might be worth discussing more in later. I'll explain the rest after the show. That's just a teaser for the audience,
Very
just to
cool.
kind of spike your appetite and see if that piques anybody's interest. But I'll explain after we wrap.
So if you agree or disagree with anything we've said for the last however long we've been speaking, and you have a pastor that you want to send this to, send it. Full send, baby, and have them comment. If you're a pastor and you want to defend your squishiness, which I would refer to as bitch assness, then bring it.
Come at us.
I
We're
mean,
just kidding.
where's my camera? There it is. Hey,
if you
come.
want to come on the show, we'll be
We
nice to
have been
you.
gracious to all of our guests. So, um, with that, I will say, stay enlightened, stay curious, and bring it. And we'll see you next week. God bless.
Bye bye.
Yeah.